like to start with a question of, can you accept the present moment as it is? Can you accept the thoughts, emotions, suffering in this moment? I ask this question because in this moment there is suffering for me. Emotions, thoughts. And as I walked listening to a talk from Eckhart Tolle, who mentioned about consciously accepting the suffering, the suffering that is arising in the present moment, to accept that suffering. Past events may have happened in the past, but they can bring suffering into the present moment. It could be a thought or a reminder, and there you are, dealing with those challenging emotions. Could be emotions of guilt, regret, jealousy, an array of emotions. We've talked about emotions before, that they are a reflection of thoughts. For example, I was driving yesterday and I was driving quite slowly in comparison to most other drivers, and I was on this long windy road, and there was a car very close behind me, almost begging me to go faster. And at one point they flashed their lights at me, and I half registered that, oh, they probably want to pass, or they want me to move out of the way so they can speed up. And there wasn't a reaction there. There was just I just continued to drive. There wasn't a thought to, should I move out of the way? But I found myself in that moment yesterday quite vulnerable. It was quite dark, and I was putting my concentration into driving. And now I had this person, I could almost feel their presence, their urgency, desperate to get past, desperate to speed up and be wherever they wanted to go. And it seemed like there wasn't space there for me to consider them. Oh, should I be moving out of the way for for them, or what could I do? So for some time we were driving in this way, and at some point the road opened up into 2 lanes, and they immediately came out into the second lane, honking their horn for what could seem like a good 10 seconds as they almost swerved into my lane to kind of, I guess that's all they could do, express their anger in that way. And so they were trying to communicate their anger, or express their anger. They shouldn't have been held up for that long. I should have moved out of the way for them, so they could travel at the way they wanted to travel, at a faster speed than I was. So this morning as I walked to get the groceries, this emotion arose. Then as I was at the grocery store, it was a type of store where there wasn't a lot of space there. The aisles were quite narrow, and there were a lot of shoppers there, a lot of shopping trolleys and jostling to get in and out of the aisles, and in that moment I could feel the thoughts and emotions arise, perhaps more emotions, that it was awfully busy there. I guess that's a thought. And perhaps there was a thought that I didn't want to be there. It was too busy for me. It seemed like everyone else was on fast forward, moving in and out, quickly jumping in front of me to grab something from a shelf, and there I was, almost. Perhaps if they didn't see my appearance, they may think of me as a very old and fragile person, just inching along with my trolley, being very slow in my movements, slow to decide what to pick up from a shelf, slow in my directions of where I wanted to go, quite like the driving of yesterday. And then I walked back with my heavy shopping bags, and it felt as if I had to get out of the way for everyone else. People were walking along, and it was quite clear that the shopping bags were quite full up. They were heavy, and still I was waiting for people to pass by, and I don't think anyone offered to wait for me to allow space for me to pass by. Or if I was directly behind somebody for a little bit, and they noticed I was there, but there wasn't perhaps there was an expectation of, perhaps you should pass by, you've got a heavy shopping load there. Maybe I'm slowing you down. Maybe these circles back to the driving again, someone wanting to pass by. But it's in that moment accepting that they are there in front of me, walking at a slower pace than I am. And it's just almost a non-labeling there, an observing of what is. In a supermarket, just accepting the movements of others, perhaps cutting across my path, moving in my personal space. Oh, okay. Waiting for others with my shopping bags. Okay. This all seemed to add up to almost a bit of overwhelm. So when I got home, I unpacked the shopping. The sweat was dribbling down my face. And then I simply just sat there, perhaps wanting some silence, perhaps wanting a safe space for all of those emotions that have arisen, just space for them to be there, an acceptance. Not a thought about this shouldn't have happened. Those people should have gotten out of the way. They should have seen me coming, or shoppers should have been more considerate of my space. Perhaps the driver should have been more patient. These all could have been thoughts and emotions attached to those thoughts. Very quickly a story is created, a narrative of that person was rude or not considerate. Labels form. And this happens so seamlessly in our days. Dozens of stories, if not stories where they're shared verbally or in your thoughts, reactions to these. Reactions that you have to carry, or speaking for myself, I have to carry, I have to deal with. There could have been great anger here, frustration of, but still there was some suffering here arisen. And the word was used to describe it was overwhelm. Perhaps of my senses, sensitivities, of perhaps being on a receiving end of that angry energy by that driver that came up. Perhaps the speed of everyone moving around me. And in that moment there was nothing in someone's wrong. Yes, there was suffering there, there was unpleasant emotions arising, pain. And in that moment, can that be accepted? This is here. It's not to say you can't do anything about it. Not to say when suffering arises you have to be, the only thing you can do is allow. Perhaps you can start with allowing, start with non-resistance. Okay, this is the reality in this moment, that there is suffering here for perhaps past or present events. And you're almost starting at almost a neutral platform, a helpful platform that doesn't add to it, a platform that doesn't create a story or more reactions to deal with later on. And from here if action is needed, it can be taken, whether it's perhaps a phone call to a friend to share. And it doesn't have to be a sharing of reactions or a sharing of unconsciousness or a sharing of labeling people. It could just be, wow, I feel suffering in this moment, and this is how my morning went, and this is the feelings that arose. And it could be journaling, or it could be even distraction could be a helpful tool. You're not resisting the emotion, perhaps I just need some space, perhaps I need to engage, to actively watch something, whether it's a teaching or a spiritual video or even a movie. You're actively, in a conscious way, taking action to relieve some of the suffering too. Again, you're not pushing it away, it's almost an ointment you're adding to it. It's slightly easier to be with it. So the allowing is happening, it's dissolving, giving the suffering space to pass through you, to go through its process, and you are assisting it in your own way. There was also a moment a couple of days ago, that I would like to share as well. It's another driving example. I'm not really a fan of driving. Less and less as each day passes do I like to drive. It seems people are getting faster and more impatient, more angry, and I seem to be sometimes slower in my driving. I often drive to the speed limit, which doesn't. I'm usually the odd one out there, where most people are quite free to drive above the limit. And so I often dislike narrow roads to drive, where I have to keep pulling over or to allow space for cars, and it can be a little bit stressful to drive in that way. And often speed bumps, if there's a road full of speed bumps, that can often be a bit stressful, where I have to, change down in gear, brake, gently go over the speed bump. I'm not able to do it like other cars that can almost race over the speed bumps. It's almost as if they're not there. The car I have is quite fragile in that respect, where if I was to go over speed bumps like other drivers do, then I would very quickly have to take the car to the mechanics to get it repaired. So I was visiting somebody a couple of days ago, and the road that takes me to their house, it is a long stretch of speed bumps. So perhaps every so many meters there's a speed bump, and there's probably a good 8 or 9 in total, maybe 10. And there's been days where I've driven in this road, and it's been quite unpleasant to have to slow down to a very slow speed and gently go over the speed bump to not damage my car, and be very aware of all the drivers lining up behind me, probably wondering why I'm going so slow over each bump, and then speeding up just for a few seconds before I have to slow down again, and then another. And then some bumps are more severe than others, and so I get in a rhythm of going over the first few bumps, and then the next one catches me out, and then I almost feel that the car, the impact of that, and feeling that that's not good for my shock absorbers. I'm hurting the car. But this particular occasion, there was almost a dancing over the speed bumps. There was a rhythm. So I'd approach the first one, and I would sense when I would have to slow down. There wouldn't be an effort there where I'd have to quickly jerk the car to a stop and then roll over the bump and then quickly accelerate again. There was almost a flow to it. So as I would approach the first bump, in good time there would be a slowing down. There'd be no sudden braking, and then I would go over the first bump, and then a gentle burst of acceleration before I was aware of that. I would have to allow the car to slow down again, and then over the next one. So there I went, dancing over the speed bumps. And in that moment there wasn't thoughts of I have to change gear and slow down and go over. There was a rhythm to it. Not an expectation. You're almost one with the road there, one with the speed bumps, and immediately it dawned on me that this is like life. You can be one with life, where you are aware that life is difficult, life is challenging, speed bumps will come and arise, and you don't have to suddenly brake to a stop and grimace as you go over the speed bump and then have to accelerate again before you're hit with another challenge. Or there's another one, I have to slow down again. There's almost that awareness that life is this road with speed bumps in there, and they're not problems, they're just there. This is the nature of life, is to, as Eckhart says, is to challenge us, is to awaken us in this way. And he says his exact words. I think there was a book Eckhart was quoting with, which said, life is difficult. And in the acceptance of that, the difficulty dissolves. So when a challenge arises, there it is, and you're back on that road with speed bumps, and you're slowing down in good time. You're allowing space for that challenge to arise. It's not a reaction of where that challenge shouldn't be there. That speed bump has just come out of nowhere. It's attacked me. It's dragging me down. You are aware that this life, there are speed bumps, and when a challenge arises, there it is. And a slowing down for that going over the speed bump is almost an allowing for it. Okay, this is just a challenge, this is just the way the road is. And there's almost a conscious choice there. You can, yes, of course, you can slam the brakes, go over the speed bump in an entitlement that I shouldn't have to be going over these. This road should be smooth, very smooth for me. And so even though it was a 20-second journey in a car over these bumps, it could almost, those 20 seconds could be 20 years of life. It could be a whole lifetime of understanding the nature of our existence. And the nature isn't dealing with one problem after another, and then there's another problem. Why is this person giving me a hard time? Why do I have to deal with this type of person? There is a dancing with these challenges. So when the challenges arise, you can use your presence, your awareness to know how much to slow down, how severe is this speed bump, how much space does this challenge need. It may be a very huge challenge. It could be an end of a relationship. and you can intuitively tune into that. It's not to say that you have to just get over it. Like I'm talking about the speed bumps. There's no time there in the physical example that you skirt over them over a few seconds, but you're giving yourself the time that is needed for each of these challenges. One challenge may only need a few seconds of just accepting this person's angry outburst at you before they move on, and then okay. Or it could be something more severe, like a divorce or an end of a relationship, where this allowing maybe a daily occurrence for however long, when these emotions arise, emotions of loss or anger, hurt, and this can be added to this example there, that there'll be more severe challenges arising. So when they do arise, it's not a story of I lost this and then I had to deal with this divorce. Oh God, that dragged me down for 5 years, and then now I lost my job. How much, So you're not denying the challenges, but you're dancing over them. You're dancing with them. There's no you opposing the challenge. The challenge and you are almost they're one. This life and you are one. There's no you and life, there's just life. Life, sense perceptions, emotions, thoughts, all dancing, all in some sort of synchronicity there. And you'll be aware of certain parts of life when there's a constriction, there's a challenge, there's hurt or there's pain that requires your attention, your space. And there's other times when those challenges won't be there, and that's nice too, that you can acknowledge that there's a smooth bit of road here, and it's just enjoying, acknowledging, accepting that. You're not hoping, I hope there's not another speed bump at the end of this smooth road. And people live life in this way. They're almost half looking for the next problem arising. But you've almost taken yourself out of this reaction cycle, and we come back to that line, that life is difficult. But when that is accepted, then it isn't difficult anymore. So the suffering I'm feeling in this moment it's accepted, it is there. And it can be used as well. As I was sat here for about an hour before I started this episode, and in a chair, and I was there was a bit of joy there of this is being used. It's almost fuel to go deeper. I can almost sense some of the suffering was from my ego or identity, of whether it's jealousy or insecurity. Allow that to go deeper. Who is insecure in this moment? Where is that person who is jealous or insecure? And there was almost a transmuting of this suffering, being used to dissolve, or used to go deeper. And I can still sense those emotions of jealousy or insecurity there. But the intensity has been lowered. and there's more space there around it for it to pass through when it's ready to pass through. And there is almost a reaffirming, a reconnecting to that non-identity, or a reconnecting to your true identity, which is not personal. There is nobody there to be personally hurt by jealousy or insecurity. It's connecting to there. So we can honor, we can acknowledge, we can care for the suffering, for what arises in the present moment. And in that caring, in that almost loving attention you're giving it, therein lies the answers, the medicine, the ointment. And from there, action can also happen as well to assist this process. For me, it was just sitting there and just being, just allowing space for these emotions to take their course. And it almost wasn't a decision to sit there, I was just simply there, and there was nowhere for me to go, nothing for me to do. It was almost like I didn't want to sit there, and I didn't not want to sit there. I was just simply there in this moment. Eyes gently closed. No tension in my face, or I could feel that I was cold, and I didn't have any desire to reach for a sweater or jumper. There was just an urge just to allow that as well. And eventually I stood up and closed the window. Action happened. And here we are. So we are on chapter 3, just called the core of ego, I believe. And we are on the passage titled, All Structures Are Unstable. Whatever form it takes, the unconscious drive behind ego is to strengthen the image of who I think I am, the phantom self that came into existence when thought, a great blessing as well as a great curse, began to take over and obscured the simple yet profound joy of connectedness with being, the source, God. Whatever behavior the ego manifests, the hidden motivating force is always the same: the need to stand out, be special, be in control, the need for power, for attention, for more, and of course, the need to feel a sense of separation, that is to say, the need for opposition, enemies. The ego always wants something from other people or situations. There is always a hidden agenda, always a sense of not enough yet, of insufficiency and lack that needs to be filled. It uses people and situations to get what it wants, and even when it succeeds, it is never satisfied for long. Often it is thwarted in its aims, and for the most part, the gap between I want and what is becomes a constant source of upset and anguish. The famous and now classic pop song, I Can't Get No Satisfaction, is the song of the ego. The underlying emotion that governs all the activity of the ego is fear. The fear of being nobody, the fear of non-existence, the fear of death. All its activities are ultimately designed to eliminate this fear. But the most the ego can ever do is to cover it up temporarily with an intimate relationship, a new possession, or winning at this or that. Illusion will never satisfy you. Only the truth of who you are, if realized, will set you free. Why fear? Because the ego arises by identification with form, and deep down it knows that no forms are permanent, that they are all fleeting. So there is always a sense of insecurity around the ego, even if on the outside it appears confident. As I was walking with a friend through a beautiful nature reserve near Malibu in California, we came upon the ruins of what had been once a country house, destroyed by a fire several decades ago. As we approached the property, long overgrown with trees and all kinds of magnificent plants, there was a sign by the side of the trail put there by the park authorities. It read, "Danger, all structures are unstable." I said to my friend, "That's a profound sutra, sacred scripture." And we stood there in awe. Once you realize and accept that all structures, forms, are unstable, even the seemingly solid material ones, peace arises within you. This is because the recognition of the impermanence of all forms awakens you to the dimension of the formless within yourself, that which is beyond death. Jesus called it eternal life. So I'm going to end the episode here just by reading this one short passage. All structures are unstable. So all forms are unstable. Even seemingly solid ones, such as people. Look at our bodies, and it can seem how solid they may appear, but it's recognizing and accepting the nature of forms and the nature of their instability, their constant change. And Eckhart says here, when this is recognized and realized that all forms are unstable, peace arises within you. Thank you for joining me for this episode, and we'll speak again very soon. Take care.